Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we're on episode 35, which is pretty awesome. This has been a super fun journey so far here with The Healing Home. And just this morning, I hit 1K on YouTube. So I got to say, it's a little bit of a milestone, and I'm super stoked about that. So thanks to everybody who's been hanging out, coming around, subscribing, listening, sharing their comments and insights, because there's a hell of a lot of people that have been hanging around that have a lot of great things to say, lots of knowledge to share themselves. And so it's really fun to just be collaborating with all these folks and getting to know more people. And so I also want to say thank you to all my patrons that have been signing up lately. That's also very much appreciated by myself and Mario included. So if you're interested in that, you can head to patreon.com/thehealinghome to become a patron. And without further ado, my guest today has a lot of insights himself. He is Ben Balderson. He's a great friend of ours. And I'm really, really excited to talk to him today about mead and fermentation and what he's been working on lately, because he's been posting a lot of great stuff that he's working on, making lots of different meads. And I'm a mead lover. I've made it a couple times myself, and I know that he's got a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share with all of us. So let's bring Ben into the stream. Welcome, Ben. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Michelle.
How are you doing?
Yeah, my internet's probably just a second behind.
It's all good.
But doing excellent.
Awesome.
Finally getting clear on the farm here. Just like it's been a wild ride. We had such a rough winter and then no spring, and so summer was like all of spring, and then Brian got hurt and I got hurt, so it's been a wild ride, but we're finally catching up and doing pretty good now.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's been a different summer, I'll say, over on our end of things too. Just lots of things being thrown in the air. I feel like the universal dice cup has been shaken quite a bit. And is slamming down onto the bar, and we're revealing, different dies that haven't come up quite yet. So it's been an interesting transition over here as well, but all is good. And glad to hear things are coming through on your end. I know you guys got some new alpaca. You have a new baby alpaca over there on the farm too?
That one, we thought baby season was over, and this one was so cool. We're so happy about it. We thought the baby season was over, and we've got one, and she's an older alpaca, and her name's Smokey, and we've always kind of considered her the grandma alpaca, and she was a rescue. In the 80s, people really sold alpacas to people, and they haven't been in the country that long, and they went around to all the elderly folks and sold them on alpaca that basically Rose basically sold these people that these animals required no care, and they are actually very easy, but that doesn't mean no care. And so they didn't shear them, basically made it sound like you just own them and you get money for having the animal somehow or something. And so these people, some of them go years without shearing these animals. Well, then I will run across them, and these animals be dying, and so I'll end up going and rescue shearing a lot of these animals, and she's one of those. And I rescue sheared her 1 year, and she hadn't been sheared in 4 years, and she could barely walk. And as I was shearing her on her back hip, there was actually a dead bird inside that had gotten tangled. Like, it must have been like 2 years or 3 years before that, because it was deep in there. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so disturbing. It's actually how I learned how to shear with a hand shears instead of an electric, because these animals would be so nasty and matted that the electric shears just wouldn't get through it, and it was just easier to do it with the hand shears. And so I got good enough at that from rescue shearing. But anyway, she was a rescue, and she ended up coming to live with us, because the next year they didn't shear them again, and the grandkids called us and like, can you just come take these alpacas? Like, yeah, we'll come get them. And she's never had a baby. She's always been real. She pisses the other mothers off because she tries to nanny their babies so much because she wants one so bad. And she did get pregnant 2 years ago, and we got some bad hay, and all of our alpacas miscarried that year. And then we two die. Yeah. But she then this year, like 3 months after everybody else was done, she just all of a sudden popped out a baby while we were shearing. And when we were shearing her, I looked down, I was like, oh my, she about to pop. Like,
wow.
yeah, so we put her in back with the girls, and she literally popped the next day.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it just shows you how nature brings us like kind of what we need too, because you know what I mean. It's like it's a surprise, but that alpaca got lucky with you guys, so that's awesome.
She's so happy and so proud of this baby, and the baby's so spunky and beautiful. It's just a pretty, so spunky, and she'll come. I got a video. She'll walk. She's like the friendliest baby, and she's not scared. Like, I got a video, and I was recording her, and she walked up like, "What are you doing?" And just walked up, and you can hear it. She just walks up and pushes her nose right into the camera. Like,
that's awesome. I remember seeing that video. I'm like, dude, that's great. Hell yeah. Yeah. You know, you bringing up the alpacas being purchased or sold to like elderly people or whatever. You know, it's funny. I've heard you talk about that before, and I'll say now my dad he's a boomer, so he's like 67, I think now, 65, and maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking on the phone, and I'm like, so when are you thinking of retiring, Pops? And he's like, oh, well, you know, I'm thinking soon, you know, thinking about getting alpaca. And I was like, wait, what? Like, and I'd never heard him say it before, right? And as soon as you brought that up, I was like, what the hell? Like, was there some news story or something like that was put out there on the national news or something talking about alpacas? And then he's like, oh yeah, you can have like farms with them and all this stuff. And I'm like thinking to myself, and I even said, I'm like, Pop, you've never had any animals like that. Like, that's a big undertaking for someone who doesn't know what's going on, you know? And he never did it or whatever. But I was like, that's really strange. Like, out of all the things, my dad wanted to do that. And then you brought that up, you know, whenever it was, I heard you say that. I was like, oh shit. I wonder if there was something that went out on blast and all these older folk just were like, well, you know, that's a good idea. I can make some money.
It was like, it was like a 2 or 3 in the morning infomercial. Yeah. Yeah. And the infomercial basically makes it out that, you know, you buy these animals, they're super easy to take care of. You put them out in the field and you just get like it you know, doesn't tell you about the caretake and the different diseases they can get. The fact that there is almost no veterinary assistance for alpacas in the United States. It's like I said, they just haven't been here, and they're not a common enough animal. You know, they don't really have hoofs, but they still got, you got to do maintenance to their feet and whatnot. And there's just, you got to trim you got to take what you do is you take a Dremel, and they get these teeth, and these teeth always grow. And they've only got one set of teeth. So alpacas are super neat. They've got split lips on top. So they always got a cleft lip, right? And they can move each side separately. And unlike most animals, like a cow or a goat or whatever, when they grab something, they just rip it up. They just tear it all. They're going to eat the stalk, some roots, the leaves, all of it. Where alpacas, they take them little lips, and they don't have any teeth on their top palate. And they take them lips and they grab onto leaves and stuff, and then they just take and pull it in with their little lips, and then they grind it against that palate with them bottom teeth. So they don't actually eat stalk and root. And that's why alpaca manure, you can direct sow onto your plants, and your plants just go gonzo from it. Your plants like, wow. And it doesn't burn them because alpacas don't eat the same things as these other animals are eating.
Gotcha. Interesting. Oh, I love this. I love talking with you, dude. Always so much knowledge to share. It's so great. And I mean, we've talked about this before, but just love the fact that you are walking the walk, talking the talk. It's not, you know, it's the real deal. So I always appreciate it. And, with saying all that, let's get into some mead and some fermentation.
Yeah.
Because this is
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm loving seeing what you're doing. So why don't you just tell people what you've been working on lately? I know you've been making a few batches. So yeah, let's just get into it.
So I kind of started out, it just came up to be mango season, and I really like this. I make a black pepper and mango mead. And so this time of year, you get, a lot of times it's Mexicans, and they have little stands, and they have just fruit that they picked out of their things or whatnot. And it's way better than the store. So I'm gonzo about those things. And they came up, and I had gotten a good supply of honey. That really determines whether I'm making meat or not. A lot of times is the honey supply, right? We burn through, I'm gonna say, 2 gallons a month anyways, or maybe, we buy it in the 5-gallon bucket usually if we can. And but
That's
I had
the way
enough
to go.
honey. Yeah. We haven't been able to get one recently, but there's been a little bit of shortage on honey. And we got a real specific person we go to here. I'll show you. It's a real raw. Oh, I don't know why StreamYard does it. Okay. It's a real raw honey. It's, and we go right to where the beehives are. And these guys even, usually it's so crystallized you can't hardly get it out. And I have to take and work super hard to get it out. It's hot today. But that's right. We go right to where the beehive is and just get it. And it's never been, that's not filtered or anything. It's raw. So finding really good honey like that's not easy. There's been a shortage, but now it's season again, and so they're getting their honey back. And I got a bunch. So Flattoberfest is coming up, and I am lucky enough to be one of the presenters at Flattoberfest this year, and it's going to be in Las Vegas, and it's an international event. So Amanda Vollmer is going to be there. I'm already friends with her, and have known her for a number of years in person. Love hanging around with her. And then a bunch of other people are going to be there. It's just a phenomenal lineup. Jason Lindgren's going to be there. Rose was on here talking earlier. She may or may not be there. She's going to be there, or I'll beat her up. I know where you live, Rose. Been to your house, so and on top of that, the spiders all decided we're going to have a spider thing. So the Weaving Spiders crew decided we're going to have like a live get together at the same time. So I said, well, that sounds like a party. I better get on this. And so I started making some real good meads, and I found some this year. For some reason, there's been some real nice, a lot of people have been trying some different melons, and there's been real nice melons at the farmers markets that are real odd. And one of them was called a kiss melon. And I was like, oh my God. And Brian, when he got hurt, he went to Reading to go get help. And Christy took him. And right before this happened, I bought a bunch of these kiss melons, because when I smelled them, I mean, from the outside, I was like ready to just start munching on the damn thing, smelling it from the, smell the butt. Yeah, just amazing. They're like a honeydew, only like a honeydew crossed with a mushmelon or something.
Ooh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit softer and real sweet, and just wow. I was like, so I thought those were probably going to go bad before Christy and Brian got back. And I was like, well, guess I'm making melon meat. And so then one of the neighbors up the way, he came down and he showed up and started doing some farmhand work. He wanted to know if I had, needed any help do it, little farmhand stuff. I said, yes, I do. So one of the things that came over, he said he was talking about his girlfriend. She likes to pick the blackberries a lot, and we live just surrounded by blackberries. And they are amazing blackberries, fresh water that flows. So the taste on the blackberries, they don't have, a lot of times they're in like a swampier area, but this is real clean tasting, just wonderful. And I was like, you bring me a 5-gallon bucket of blackberries, I'll give you a gallon of meat back. And he didn't say anything. And then I was racking the mango and the kiss melon ones, and there wasn't enough room in the rack, so I had a little bit of decent flavored stuff left. And him and Christy and Brian got to taste it, and he showed up the next day with a whole bucket full of plums. He's like, yeah, hey, let's do this. And he showed up twice more with fruit since then too. But yeah, he thought, he's like, that's the best thing I've ever had. I want some of that. So Flattoberfest coming right now. I got plum and a spiced plum and mango pineapple and kiss melon, and I'm getting ready to do just nectar of the gods, which is just honey fermented. And then with a vanilla bean in there, in the secondary, you throw a couple of vanilla beans in there on the secondary.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, God, I found some vanilla beans. I wish you could smell through the computer. I'd bring them over. Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Real nice. But and blackberry. But so fermentation, for all practical purposes, there's a couple different kinds of fermentation. I got a couple cool books. The one that a lot of people are also starting to get into is your more food, your lactic acid type fermentation, where you're basically taking and putting food in a brine and fermenting it that way. And what's happening is in all your minerals, in all your sugars, what's causing them to be stable in these plants is carbon. When they say you're a carbon-based life form, it's not like you're some brick of carbon. Carbon is actually just stabilizing all these different little chains. And when you knock these, but in order for you to make that part of your body, for you to actually absorb it, that carbon molecule needs to be knocked out of it. And one of the ways I like to liken this, because people understand it, and just because of the culture we're in now, is cannabis. And you can't just go pick cannabis off the plant and eat it. You need to decarbonate it. And this is what we're talking about. You need to knock that carbon molecule out of there and now make it bioavailable for your body. And so with this fermentation, you're making a lot of things. You're knocking out those carbons. It's farting out the carbons, and it's changing the basic way the chemistry of the food is, and making it more available for your body, which is something that your biome would have done. But there's a lot of people that this helps lift the load that your biome's going to have to do. And then if you don't have a healthy biome, you may not even be able to process some of these things, and you might not even be taking in these nutrients. You're just eating them and basically right out the other end, and it's not really making a change. Did I? Oh, that is amazing. Thanks, Stacy. That is hilarious. I did not do that on purpose. And it is 4:20 in all of our time, Stacy and
it
myself
totally
and
is.
Michelle.
among friends.
Yes. And hopefully Michelle and Mario are going to be at Flattoberfest also.
Oh my God. I really, really, really want to try and get there. I'm like really trying. We had
We
so much
really,
travel.
really want you there.
I know it, man. We really want to be there because we had so much travel this summer. My brother got married and then his cousin got married.
Yeah, I've
So
seen.
it's just like, but I'm gonna do my damnedest. We're gonna make it work. I'm determined. I really am.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this one here, mastering fermentation. It's more about food, and you are going to do some alcohol, like you can see down in here where the vinegars, which vinegar is just your made alcohol, and then now you put in another component, and that eats off of the yeasts and from the alcohol, and it converts that into vinegar. So that's been pretty popular. Michelle and I both love this book, The Sacred and Herbal Healing Beers.
Yeah, my friend. That's right.
So this is more about the alcohol type fermenting. And so with that, it's much more strict that it's anaerobic. Like with your food, anytime you have the actual food, you got to get underwater so the oxygen's not touching it, which is going to create more of a mold instead of ferment, like where you're getting your yeast growing instead of, which is a fungi. It's actually a fungus. Instead, you're going to get more of a mold that grows, because either way, the system's going to start breaking down. But with the mold, you're putrefying, and it's not delicious or good or anything. It's just, well, there are molds that are pretty awesome, like the koji mold, which is also a type of fermentation. That one's an interesting one. That's where you get like your soy sauce and your stuff like that. That's from the koji mold.
Okay.
So yeah, entirely different fermentation. And a lot of people don't eat, and not kimchi. That's normal. No, kombucha is normal. I'm trying to think of the other one for the other big thing that they do with the mold.
Tempeh?
Yeah. Anyways, so this is alcohol, and this is very what you're going to do is you're going to take something that's heavy in sugar, and really that's, at the end of the day, you can make it out of almost anything. The idea being that you're going to take a tea first, and you're going to convert and make available the sugars in these plants. Some things are pretty easy. Some of them, like a potato, making true potato vodka, not easy. Trying to get the starches in thank you, Stacy. You were on fire. Converting the starch in potatoes and making that available, it's again just not easy. But what you're trying to do is you're taking whatever your primary ingredient is, and one of the tastiest ingredients is fruit. And fortunately, fruit have a lot of available sugar. And so you go around and you take all your local fruits, and which not all of them work. Most kiwi will not ferment for shit. Like there's something in that stops it from fermenting. Yeah, I tried a strawberry kiwi and failed, to figure that one out. And then I talked to some other guys that ferment. They're like, yeah, not kiwi. There's something in it that doesn't. I can't remember what they said, but it does. But yeah, there's a handful of fruits that don't work out real well. They just don't ferment. But it's fruit season, so you take and you make a tea basically out of it. And what you're really trying to do is pull the oil out of the fruit, and then also open up those sugars and get those sugars available, because that's what the yeast is going to go ahead and live off of. And you're going to go ahead and put that. Some people put them in them square buckets for their primary. I got a real good fruit squisher, so I don't really leave that much plant material, so I don't really use the buckets. So this one's a 3-gallon. Most of my big ones are in use, but this is called a carboy. This is a glass carboy. That's typically what I use. I've got 3 gallons, 5 gallons, and 6.5 gallons. And that is a lot because of racking. Partially because, sometimes you only get enough to make so much. but a lot of that has to do with the racking process, which we'll talk about in a minute, because when you rack, it leaves a little bit. So if you make 5 gallons, you don't really have 5 gallons, there.
Right.
But I will make that. And I've got a real nice fruit squisher. And so I'll take, and I've got a nice pot. I ended up, because I do this so much, especially for my gut bomb and stuff, I go through that so fast. Like when I would make
that
a batch,
stuff is delicious, by the way. Oh my God.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so freaking good. Yes.
Yeah, I put a lot of effort into that. I'm so proud of it a lot of times, and I just love hearing that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you can taste it. It's good.
I would make a batch, and I would literally be sold out in under a day, and then it was always a problem. And so I ended up having to get a 26-gallon pot to try even have enough to keep up. And I got to make like this giant thing at a time. And so it's a huge stainless steel pot, and then it's got a strainer inside of it. So most of the liquid's going to come out through that. And then I can take the plant material and put it in basically a microfiber bag. And then I put that in my fruit squisher, and I just squish it out, and that gets all the goodies out. And then I've got a funnel that I put over it, that it all just goes right in there, and that's also got a strainer, just layers of keeping particles out. Layers and layers of keeping particles out. So because of that, I don't use the buckets really. I just go straight into the carboys. And once you're at that point, you're gonna let it cool down, and then I will separately. I only fill it when I do it about 3/4 of the way, because then I'm gonna also mix this honey separately, and I just take the water and the honey and I get them all mixed up, and I'll let that cool down enough to add my yeast. For that, I do like your wild fermentation, which I want to talk about more in depth here in just a minute. But I do like it. But when you're making your yeast, here's just an Erlenmeyer flask, and you just take and you mix it up with some of your same temperature. And the different yeasts have different temperatures, but 60 to 80, somewhere in there, usually is about what most of your yeasts are going to, if you go and buy a yeast, what they're going to want to function at. And then you take and you get it livened up, and the little foam that appears on top, you go ahead and separate out and just use that foam, and the yeast that didn't really come alive, the little dead yeast, you just leave them out and whatnot. That's just more for refining. You can just take the yeast and pour it right in and shake it up, and as long as it's at temperature and you've got your sugar in there, most of the yeast are going to take off. You're going to have a success. It's for the most part. Before you start, probably one of the most important parts is hitting everything with something like Be Bright.
Okay.
And basically this is just OxyClean. And so what it's going to do is kill any mold, anything like that, any extra bacteria. It's just food grade OxyClean is really all it is, for the most part. But it cleans with active oxygen, chlorine and bisulfite free for the Be Bright. Removes beer stone label. It takes out all the little fungus and bacteria. So that's important, because if you have a little bit of leftover fungus from an old, one that you've sat around and you washed it, but there's little seed funguses in there that you can't see, while it looks clean, it's got little seeds in there. Now you've given it the conditions to grow real nice, so you knock all that kind of thing out before you start. And then the first ferment. So then at this point we have what we call a first ferment. And we're going to take and put the, here's a full size, damn it. Forgot I got a new one. Here's a full-size version of the bag that you just dump the fruit and stuff into, and it's a micron
nice.
bag, and I shove that in the squisher, and then that,
Whoops.
and then yeah, wrong way.
I want you full screen. What the heck? I don't know how to do it. All right,
So,
that's a nice big one.
Yeah, and then you just dump your fruit or whatever it is that you're doing in there, and you can squish it all out without getting a whole bunch of plant material in there. You can get all the goodies out of it. And then you take, it's called a bung, and it's just a little piece of rubber. It's called a bung. Got a bung hole. And this is called a car. This is called a car block. So what's going to happen is what these little yeasts are going to do is they're going to eat them sugars in there, and they're going to fart out carbons. And because this is a anaerobic ferment, which means without oxygen. Anaerobic means without oxygen. Aerobic means with oxygen. You don't want oxygen in there. So the carbon's going to push all the oxygen out. All this is, and that's going to go through here. So you put water in here to this line right here. And then as the carbons eat, as the yeast eat up the sugars and fart out the carbons, it's going to go ahead and push through here and let that pressure out and let that continue, because otherwise you'll end up getting a carbon lock and the yeast won't be able to continue being active. So every now and then you want to stir it up while you're doing it. And I mean, this thing will fart like crazy when you do that, like blah, 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 blah. But so you throw that on there, you throw that on there, and for the first couple of weeks, anywhere between 2 weeks to a month, they call that the primary ferment, and this thing will just go like mad. It's just constantly. Poor Brian, his room is actually, there's an addition on the house here that I put on because our house was only 20 by 30 when we moved here. So I added on another 10 by 20 or whatever. And half of it's his room, half of it is the pantry. And they're all sitting there. So he says, sounds like water dripping all night. Just blip, 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 blip. But it'll quit. Once it gets done doing that, it will settle the hell down. And when that happens, you're going to notice that down here is going to develop basically like in vinegar, you'd call it the mother, or in kombucha, they call it the SCOBY, and it's up here because it's not a sealed system like this. And it's basically dead yeast and poop and converted residue, and it tastes like a complete ass, and it smells real bad. And then up top, up here is going to be your lighter methyl alcohol kind is going to push up there. You don't really want this stuff up here. And then any mold that you're going to have that does appear, for like any plant particulates that happen to be up there, that might happen. So at that point, after the primary ferment settles down, it's just basically kind of like a fish tank cleaner, except for this got like a little thing to keep the stuff out of it, and it keeps it up off the bottom so you don't go all the way to the bottom. But you look in your thing and you drop this down into just above that level of gook, and you just start pumping it. You attach a hose to it so you can stick it right into the next carboy, which should have already been cleaned and everything else. Or you can get a little electric one, same concept. You just stick this hose down to just above the guck area, and you suck that middle portion out, leave a little bit of the top, and you just and suck that middle portion out and transfer that into a new carboy. And that's when you start the secondary ferment. And one of the things that has come out that I thought was pretty awesome, I don't normally like working with plastic at all in this, except for like my funnels occasionally or something like that. But they came out with this, they call it a fermonster. And in the fermonster, you can actually buy to add in there this sock, and it's got a giant mouth like this on the actual fermenter too. And so you can take and then put your secondary in there, do your transfer, and as Michelle was saying, a lot of people didn't realize is then. So in your first primary ferment, depending on what yeast you have, yeast have a certain alcohol tolerance. Now, the stuff for Flattoberfest, I went with Belgian.
Nice. All right, I'm there.
Yeah. I went with Belgian. And Belgian has like an 18% tolerance. It's
okay.
Them Belgians don't fuck around. And so yeah. So in the primary ferment, the idea then is that the yeast have eaten as much or close to as much as they can eat and put out enough alcohol to where they can't survive anymore. So now anything that you add in at the secondary, the yeast isn't able to convert anymore because the alcohol percentage is too high. They can't live. And the same applies for any fruit sugar that you're putting in there. So really any fruit sugar that you were put in there in the first time, while the conversion happened out of that fruit sugar, so it carries a flavor of it, it's not the same at all as the fresh fruit flavor, the fresh sugars of it. And so you can drop them fresh fruit right in there. And you throw it in there for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then you just pull this whole bag right out. And and it's just going to be add more sugars to it that's not been converted, basically into it. And then I'll pull it out, to try and stop any mold. Because after a couple weeks, when it comes up to a month, I'm going to rack it again anyways. And again, with this micron bag, none of that fruit that you just added, mostly the particles don't go in there. Like if you do strawberries or melons or something that squishes down and really breaks down, yeah, some's going to get through it. It happens. But it doesn't make a complete mess out of your next carboy, right? So, and then, like here, I'll show you my Fermonster. Like with the Fermonster,
I hope people are taking notes, man, because there's some really great information here. If you're wanting to start making mead, or if you've maybe made it before, but you want to up your game. Oh, man, I'm taking notes.
So like with the Fermonster, this bad boy's 7 gallons.
Okay.
So, you can get them in different sizes, but then I can rack down. So when I start my fermentation, let's take the mango one. I start out with 3 5-gallon carboys for my primary fermentation. Then I rack down into these two, which is 2 7s. Now, obviously, 3 5s is 15 and 2 7s is 14. So I have a little video on my channel even of the actual nasty goop that was left after I'd done all of this, comparative to what's up, Ian, compared to what I racked into this. Well, then at that point, I didn't actually put, even 7 gallons in each of these of that, because it actually was probably 6 gallons. And then I added the fruit in and a little bit more honey to back sweeten. And that's basically a back sweetening. If you do it the other way, it's called a dry mead, and then this is just a back sweetened mead. And dry meads are nice also, but then in the dry mead, you definitely want to make sure you use enough honey in your primary for sure, or else you end up with a real dry mead that just doesn't really do anything. But you can drop here. I'll show you since we're on the big screen thing. But take this little bugger. Go like that. And then you can fill that up with some nice fruit and screw on this lid. And then once again, it's a different bung, but this bung's a little small. I've got it down there, but is put this on. Same thing. Now when you do this again, because you've added more that, it is going to take off a little bit more if you didn't have enough honey in your primary. It will take off a little bit. So after a couple weeks, I will take and pull this out, pull the sock out with the fruit, because once again, the especially fruit material is subject to mold. And so I'll pull that out, and this sock just takes it all out with it. And that's real nice. And that's the only reason I use these plastic for monsters. I don't know of any glass ones that have this ability at all and have this mouth like this at all. I do have some Italian carboys that have like that you can screw on the outside, and they're a little bit wider, but nothing like this, where you got this whole thing that you can take off and put this whole sock in there. But I'll pull that out, and then I'll let it settle for anything fall again, and then I'll rack it again back into, depending how much I have. Again, I got 3 gallon, I got 5 gallon, just depending on how much it looks like I'm going to be able to pull. I'm going to rack it down into these other things, and then we're going to let it sit for a while. And that one's going to be a couple months. And the longer it sits, the clearer it gets. Now, there are some different additives you can put in there that are going to make the full fermentation go faster. That you don't get used that so much with mead anymore because of the advancements with yeasts, where most of these yeasts now are, it used to take a full year, just flat out. And it was actually a multi-stage feeding, where you had to feed the yeast, and the yeast wasn't able to convert very well. And just with the advancements in the yeast, and you'll notice that if you try that with the wild yeast, where wild yeast is going to run definitely closer to a year rather than, it's technically ready to drink in like 6 to 8 weeks, especially with some of these fastings. Yeah. I mean, the Lalvin 1118, which is more of your mead champagne yeast in your typical for your Lalvin, which is your what most people have. Christy, are you in the kitchen? Can you grab my yeasts, my better yeast out of the fridge and show them? That one's your more standard, and that one is pretty quick. There's a couple real fast yeasts. I don't really like those. The one I've been, this is Saf Ale 256. This one's a Belgian. Super nice. This one's got 18%. It runs about 18%. You can see pretty good temperature range on this one, 53 to 77, which is important. I don't have real great temperature control, so I really try hard to get some real nice ones. But this one's going to give you real high-end alcohol. And then
what's the name of that one again?
This one is BE 256, and it's Saf Ale is the company.
Okay.
And then this one I really like, Mangrove's mead yeast, the MO5. And this one's just a real nice general one. It's 59 to 86. So it's got a real nice temperature range also. Not quite as high a percentage as the Belgian. And then I got a German one that I like because I'm German. And so you just, and then the different yeasts give you different flavors. The different yeasts are going to interact with different fruits better. So at that point, you're going to, the only thing you can really do is rely on forums, because that is really a thing. So it's like, oh, well, what goes good together, and then you're gonna kind of just run across your own things. There's just gonna be a lot of trial and error. Yeah, the Lalvin 1118. Yeah, I didn't like it either. And that's what most people use is the Lalvin, but I don't like it. And it's really heavy carbonation in that one.
Okay.
So a lot of people use it for mead, but I'm not a real fan of it. But when you add in your own yeast, you can get most of the ones now are pretty quick, pretty wicked quick. I still like letting it sit because even if it will convert and make it drinkable in that time period, the true flavor of it still takes so long to come out. The best mead that I ever personally have drinking was just the nectar of the gods, which is just honey and some vanilla bean, and it had been aged for 4 years, and they had racked it I think 4 times, and it had been aged for 4 years, and I had it at a harvest ceremony, and it was like I was drinking just honey water that somebody like just made honey water. Gut started burning. I was like, "Ooh, that's the stuff." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is so awesome, Ben. Because I've learned so much already. Like, because I'll say the times I've made it, which is twice, I've now made a tradition for myself to do blackberry mead. And I've done it very rustically, I guess, even compared to what you're doing, because even like I didn't use the bags to filter the fruit. I just filtered it with like cheesecloth and a sieve, used champagne yeast, just, whatever, kind of doing that. Then you taught me about the getting the middle half. So I did that for my batch that will be ready in October. But man, I am
You're going to
so
notice
excited.
such a difference in the clarity of flavor. It
Oh,
won't
I
have
can't
like
wait.
the way most people describe it is a footy, is like it's just kind of like and it just and especially after you open it, that starts becoming prevalent really quickly. Where
Okay.
this instead, without you've removed that component, and you're gonna really love it. You're gonna.
Oh, I can't wait. And dude, I'm going to be at Flattoberfest. I'm just going to start saying that instead of like, I don't know, because I want to in my heart. I'm like, dude, no, let's make this shit work. For so many reasons I want to be there, but I do want to taste the mead. And, I poured some of the stuff that I've made because one of my questions for you is the first time I did it, I added honey to the second ferment, which made it like a sparkling mead, very light sparkling. So one of the questions I had then was, does adding the fruit, if you were to add fruit to the second ferment and then add honey when you rack it after that second time, would that create sparkling mead, or would that just
Even
make it
the fruit
sweeter?
will.
The fruit will.
Even the fruit. Yeah,
Okay.
and then also that's again going to depend on your yeast, because some yeasts are more prone toward the leaving that inbound carbonation than others. Yeah, if you're using a champagne yeast like the Lalvin 1118, that
Yeah.
is super notorious. I mean, it's made to do that. And
Okay.
then also another factor that's going to depend on how much inbound carbonation is how much you whip it. So especially during your primary ferment, and then even after, one of the things that you do, and I don't have it right here right now, but it's just got little it almost looks like a cleaner, it's just got like little whips at the end, and you stick it in here, and it goes in there, and it just like this bung, and it just reaches down, and then you just spin it, and it lets out all the carbonation.
Gotcha.
And it's especially during the primary, you need to let out that carbonation, because that carbon in there will literally stop the yeast from being able to continue. It'll get a carbon lock, and you got to let it back out, just like a fire, where you got to let that smoke out, or else the fire will just die. Same thing with yeast, same thing with life. Like even if you don't let that carbon out, because your body's consistently converting things, which is releasing carbon. And if you don't let that carbon out, which is why you're taking in so much oxygen and letting out carbon dioxide, because the oxygen's attaching to the carbon and then vehicling it back out, so your body can continue to make these.
Yep, totally. Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, this is amazing. Well, I want to ask you too. So when was the first time you made mead? And did you learn from someone, or was it like something that you just were like, I'm going to try this, and then you kind of, went from
I'm a big
wherever
fan
that
of
took
fuck
you?
around and find out. Yeah, I'm a big fan of fuck around and find out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and it don't. I made some a number of years ago. My family's made it for a lot of years too. So even as
I
a
wondered
kid,
about that.
It was more with sugar back then, and less with honey, and there just really wasn't the same availability. And like I said, the fact is until fairly recently, if you tried to make things with make me, it was a longer process. I mean, a much better process. Just like with honey, because your honey is a complex sugar rather than a simple sugar, it takes a lot more for your body to process it. It's also much better for your body than a simple sugar. The simple sugar is a problem. So the same thing, the simple sugar is going to convert much easier and quicker. You can literally, depending on the heat, if you got a yeast that'll survive like 100-degree heat, and you stick a wine bottle, you try to make a bottle of hooch and throw it out in your trunk and drive around, like you got hooch like that night. It's crazy. But
well, yeah, because I look at this as like, I have such a fondness for keeping ancestral tradition, right? And so I know that this is part of my lineage. It's part of your lineage. It's part of a lot of people's lineages, though. Once you start looking into making fermented drinks and all sorts of stuff, because even in the sacred and herbal healing beers, I mean, they're talking about doing, using corn, like you said, pretty much anything you can be making this out of. So I think that that's why one of the reasons why I also am stoked to talk to you about this is because this is like, it's just like a universal art form that all cultures, all people forever have been doing it. And nature has been doing it on its own naturally. And it's like, I think that that's one of the coolest things about this. And like you said, just like the art of just fucking around and seeing what happens, that's why I just encourage people to just try it and use some of these tips that Ben is talking about, because it can be a really fabulous thing. And then it can be a not so fabulous thing too, because I've tried. Yeah. Exactly. That's a really good one. I like that because the thing I've used before is what is it called? Like Sanistar or something like that. It's an acid based, which is okay. That stuff works all right. But I want to find myself some of that stuff because it seems even like it'd be even a little bit better or even more gentle. I don't know. The Sanistar is cool.
No, it's super gentle. It's super gentle. I know what you're talking about. It comes in the little bottle with the two. I know what you're talking about.
You can squeeze it to measure it out and everything, which it's suited me well, but it's time for something new.
No,
too.
It is good stuff, and they sell it right in there, but yeah, and the same thing with these recipes. That's for me again. It's just fuck around and find out. It's shocking what works well and tastes good, and so much of that got stifled by the what's the name of the beer purity law.
I don't know.
Beer purity law. Yeah. So before this, and that's why I really love this book, because this shows you that before the beer purity law, which said that beer had to be hops, these certain components in order for it to be a beer. And so then all beers started becoming that. And they cut out the fermentation of all these other things in order to fit into that, because they literally made a law about it. Um, and so you start looking back at this and then realizing that almost no recipes in this giant book contain hops, almost none.
Right.
And one of the interesting things about hops is hops actually, for all that everybody goes on about soy boys and all this, hops contains more phytoestrogen than soy. I think it's something like 100 times more phytoestrogen than soy. I mean, it's a shocking amount of estrogen derived out of hops, which makes sense why all these guys that drink so much of the beer in the evenings, grow the boobs. It's like, well, you take in a lot of estrogen there, bro.
And the beer belly, it's like that. It's like keeping weight on, because that's a thing too. And obviously it's calories and all that stuff too. But no, there's something to be said about that. And it's interesting too, because I think he talks about it in this book, but I know from other research I've done is that mugwort was actually one of and wormwood, which are both in the same family. They were actually some of the original OG flavorings for beer. Mugwort specifically, that's why it's called mugwort. It literally translates to mug plant. And it's so bitter that, that's what they were trying to achieve. And that's what this guy, Stephen Brunner, does such a good job of explaining. And he just really goes in depth. And Ben and I have talked about this book and nerded out on it together before, but I can't recommend it enough to people who are interested in brewing their own stuff, but natural stuff, and learning about the plants as you go, because he'll talk about the recipes and then he'll share a blurb about what the plant, where you can find it, what it's good for, why it was used. That's the other thing. He talks about why would they use what they used, and he has more primitive, old recipes, and then he'll have updated recipes that are a little bit more modernized for somebody who's making stuff right now. So get your hands on that one. Another good one. Oh, go ahead.
And these are going to be more herbal heavy. It's not going to be so fruit, so it's not so much just get drunk drink.
Yes.
I don't think that for as much as they were drinking mead, and I've said this in different ales and things, and I've said this in the past, despite what, when we're getting ready to have a party, so we're gonna have a good time, but I don't always go with the 18%, your wild ferments, you're not getting a high alcohol content, but what you are doing is opening up availability of things in that plant that were not available to you before, and you're making it so that way at room temperature without refrigeration, you can store plants. You can take, all these different foods, a huge book, and you can just leave them on a shelf. They're shelf stable. They're more nutritious, and refrigeration. And this was so if you imagine living without electricity, without basic basic foods, well, how did we ever do that? Hey, you take your foods, you ferment them up. Now I can sit them in the pantry for however long I want. Some things for years later. Like I said, the best meat I ever had was 4 years old.
Yeah. No, totally. And, it actually, I feel increases the nutritional value of the food in its own way too, because then obviously you're getting the probiotics. But I think it's such a brilliant thing to be doing, and that I think too, what happened in the mainstream is just when people think of fermentation, they think of kombucha. Now, I love me some kombucha. I consistently have kombucha. We always have it because it's one of those things that you can continuously make very easily and everything. But I think that that's one of the number one things people think of, and they think of going to the grocery store and getting it. But there's so many different things that you can ferment and so many ways to consume fermented foods that it doesn't just have to be, what the mainstream is talking about. You can I started fermenting tomatoes, I don't know, a handful of years ago. And some people that I was telling, they're like, oh, you can ferment tomatoes? I didn't know that. And I said, well, I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that either, but now I know. And so now I'm doing it every year because it's very simple, and that's the thing. As long as you have salt, with most things, you can ferment almost anything, and that's what the tomatoes kind of proved to me, because it's literally chopping tomatoes and basil, onion, garlic, and adding salt, like 4 tablespoons to a quart jar of those tomatoes. And that's going to be enough to keep it, shelf stable once it's fermented and everything else. You can put it in a cool place, but dude, there is nothing like it. It's delicious, and so there's so many little things that we're not told. You can ferment lemons. You can do all sorts of shit. So don't let them tell you can't ferment.
One of our favorite things, it's so stupid simple. We just take a mason jar, fill it with honey, and when we go, like, especially if I'm growing garlic, and we end up with an excess that's going to start getting funky, we just take and peel them, throw them in that honey, and our honey, let them sit there, and oh my God, fermented garlic that's just been sitting in a jar of honey. That's literally all you do is take garlic and just jam it in a jar of honey and let it burp every now and then. Oh my God. Ooh.
Yeah, it's something special. And the thing I did I think it was 2 years ago I did it. I made some elderberry fermented honey. Holy shit. Just like took the elderberries, and for those who aren't familiar with doing something like that, when you have the fruits like an elderberry or a grape, or they have that like that white coating, that's yeast. That's the natural yeast. So it was literally elderberries into the honey. Oh my God. And I mean, it's so delicious. You can just sit there and sip on it because it kind of gets a little liquidy, but that is one of the best like fermented honeys I've ever made. And you can do that with so many things. It's a beautiful thing. That's awesome. People are asking about the book again. So that we were just showing the Sacred and Herbal Healing Beers. That's the book. I also put it in the chat in the beginning. Look at us. We both got it. So, yeah, no, that's up in the chat. I put that one in there. And I don't know which other one, Ben, did you have? What's the title on that other one?
The other one that I was showing, and I've got a few other ones, and I'm not like making any, huge although I do make a big recommendation on that one. But this one's just more of a mastering fermentation. And this one's more of the, like, here's making miso or pomegranate molasses, maple port vinegar,
ooh,
bran fermented vegetables. So it's just your foods, vinegars, things like that, which also are super important. And I'm gonna get the book for it and try my hand at it with the koji mold and see how that pans out for me. That I find that one just fascinating. That most people don't even realize that they're eating a mold derivative. With some of the more popular foods, and I'll definitely and I imagine just like with your other basic fermentation, where like at home mead, if you do it right, there is no store mead that can possibly touch it. They're just not. The things that they have to do in order to make it FDA approved and sellable, make it so it doesn't taste good anymore. Even in the damn dab, in the damn dab community, that was immediately noticeable. Like, you have, in order to make it sellable in a dispensary, you have to run it through a CRC process that pulls out and makes sure there's no pesticides, and all these things sound good. Make sure there's no pesticides or toxic metals or all this and that. And then you smoke it and you're like, that's horrible. That is just ass. Like, why did you do that? Hey, and the same thing for the alcohols. It's when I was 19 is when I actually realized this, because I went to Germany when I was 19. And in Germany, you would get drunker than hell. I'm 19. I was 19, not going to lie. I actually don't drink at all now. I'll drink at ceremonies or, use vinegar or something like that. Or I will probably have a horn because I'm meeting a lot. I'm not Michelle. I've met Michelle in person. I've got to enjoy her presence and have a good time. But then, and so then it'll be a reunion with that. And then a bunch of other spiders that I have not met. So I'm going to probably drink a horn of mead there, but that'll be the first time I think I've had alcohol. And since I moved into this house that October, the celebration
Wow.
we did for moving in here. Yeah, and I had a horn of mead that night. I just don't drink. When I was 21, I think I did a little bit when I turned 21, and then I was just pretty much done with it. It's not for me. And then as an alchemist, there's a bunch of reasons I don't. But I really enjoy everybody else enjoying it, and then when I do, I really like it to be good. So
Yeah,
but I will probably.
I'm totally with you on that. And it's funny too. And I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but like I used to drink a lot when I was younger. It was like a thing. And it's like it's like a curse in my family, I swear. So I remember stepping back from it and kind of being like, yeah, buck stops here. I enjoy a glass or two every now and then, but it's funny because here we are, we don't drink very often, but we just love making it. It's really fun to
Yeah,
make and to
yeah,
share it, and I think that's part of my joy of it too, is to be able to make it and experiment with it and share it. And it's like I have like jugs of sage ale that I made like 3 years ago still, because I'm just like, well, we don't even drink that often, but I had to try it. I had to try and make it. And then if you have friends that come over who like to drink beer,
you
well, hey,
bet.
we've got this beer, let's have some or whatever. So that's really funny, and it's interesting how that kind of works. And yeah, I
I
feel the
got I
same way
got
with alcohol.
jugs. I got jugs like this everywhere in the house. Like the house is lousy with them. I swear to God, like the other day, like when we were doing something, we were looking for empty jugs, and we found some in the bathroom under there. Like, what is this? Anyways, you start sniffing. Oh, okay.
Oh man, dude, that's awesome. I know. I feel like that too. Our refrigerator is kind of like that. I've got concoctions. I have like a section in the fridge. It's just like bottles and bottles, and a section on the corner that's just a bunch of stuff that's, chilling out and things I've made over the years. So yeah, I love it. It's
It's
cool.
stewing. It's stewing.
Yes. Oh yeah. Dude, well, this was
Sounds like
awesome. I think even unless there's anything else that you wanted to make sure you impart on people who want to, dive into fermentation, but specifically mead, I think I even got all the questions that I had for you too out. So yeah, if you have any closing thoughts and you want to let people know where they can find you and where they can find the videos that you've been posting recently about what you've been making, go for it, my friend.
absolutely. I just wanted to wax poetic about the yeast itself for just a moment. That it's super interesting that no matter what, life is going to break down. You're going to have this conversion that's going to happen. And when you're doing it under a controlled environment that we're creating, you can get something really beautiful that's really useful, and it just keeps feeding life into life. Or else you get the putrefaction, which eventually is going to break it down, and it's going to end up in the same place as what we're doing. It's just amazing how those components and when you look at that plant and at a human being, an animal, if we take it and we put it in those conditions, it will always do this other thing. But then the world just has this other thing, the putrefaction. So either way, the breakdown is going to happen. It's inside of you. Like they call it wild yeast, but I don't believe that the yeast is wild at all. I believe that yeast was always inborn inside of that plant. And because you didn't let the oxygen in, now it had two routes, oxygenated or non-oxygenated, and it's going to break down in one of those two ways and end up becoming this next thing. And so you forced it into this other route. And it's like, well, I got a piece for that too, baby, because I'm nature and I got the answer for everything. So, and literally this entire sequence is also happening in your body at all times. So it's just amazing, and it's such a wonderful thing to get in touch with. So Benjamin Balderson on YouTube. Haven't Rockfin's normally where I put my show. I have been on a break from my show. I just got overwhelmed. Like I said, the farm here went crazy, and then I just had so many things come up. Brian got hurt, and I got hurt. Like you see this big pink scar on my hand. My hand got used as a tug of war between two pit bulls. It was I turned it into hamburger. Yeah, so
damn.
So I've been
I
down.
didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't talk about it too much. I don't try and bitch around too much. And then just a successful spring with babies. We had so many babies that everywhere that we ended up running out of room, and I had to build new housing and put up new fencing. So thank you, Polly. Yeah, he's always great.
He is.
Yeah, Benjamin Balderson. I'm normally put my show on Rockfin, but I put them little clips like that on YouTube. Other than that, what's up, George?
Yeah,
He's
howdy, George.
I got something for him. He hasn't gotten it yet, but I got something for him.
But, nice. He's so great. Yeah. I connected with him on Facebook, over the last couple of years. Wonderful human being.
Yeah, me too. I got some. Before I ran out of gut bomb, I set aside some for him. I ain't sent it off yet, but I set aside some for him. It's hard for us to get to the post office. Come to Flattoberfest. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I will be there. That's where my intention is there. It has been the whole time, but I was like wavering because it's just like the expense to travel these days is just like, okay, but I just like in my heart, like I said, want to be there. I want to meet so many of the people that I haven't been able to meet that I get to see on internet TV.
Yeah, it pretty funny. Much it has replaced the TV. Like
it totally has.
I watch you and Mario regularly. My TV literally collects dust. It doesn't. So this is kind of that transition, and it's a good transition than some fucking Hollywood jackass that has no I can't really bond with. I'm just watching for pure entertainment. Now I get to actually have good people that I can do this with, and they're people I could spend time with. It's not Hollywood assholes. So I think it's a good replacement.
I do too. And we've talked about that before when I tripped out one night thinking about it. And I was like, damn, you have like a regular scheduled program because there's people, that have a show that comes out on every Monday at 6:00. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to check it out. And so it's just really funny how that has happened. But I feel the same way because I'd rather be watching this and other intelligent people who are, sharing their knowledge versus the alternative. So. Right on, my friend. Well, thank you so much for stepping in. I really appreciate it. I always love talking to you. Love seeing you. Big hugs to you and Christy, and much love. And I'll see you at
Flattoberfest. She yelled her love from the bathroom.
Nice.
Laundry room. She said the laundry. Nice. My bad.
Oh, and one last thing. I know we said it on last Thursday, but that vapor soothe that Christy makes, holy smokes. God, that stuff is a godsend. It's awesome. We've been using it a lot. Mario's dad now wants a jar of it, so I got to talk to you guys about that and send it down to Fresno. But nice. Yeah, he was hooked. I told him he was having some ear issues, and I was like, hey, just rub this on the back of your ears. That's what I do. And it like opens them up. It kind of like just helps move things. And he put it on and he goes, oh my God, he was putting on his knees and everything. So he loved it. So yeah, thank you for all the beautiful products you guys make as well. So yeah, we'll be in contact about that for sure.
Also create that that our favorite was the Mugwort, but that calendula soap that you made.
The salt soap.
Yeah. She like damn near walked around and just pasted it under her lip. She walked around for like a week and just kept smelling it every day when she came by. Actually, she was coming home last night and I used it to shower with because she was coming home and I hadn't seen her in 3 days.
Oh,
sexy time.
Yeah. Nice. That's fucking awesome. I love you guys so much. Alrighty. Well, we'll see you very soon.
We love you guys.
All right. Thanks again,
I hope
Ben.
So. October.
Yes. It's coming. Vegas, baby.
Yes.
All right. Later. Alrighty, y'all. Another successful. Oh, I'm muted. I'm muted. That mute button. All right. Alrighty, y'all. That was another successful episode we had here with Mr. Ben Balderson. Super stoked that he was able to come in, step in for Miss Cheney, who couldn't be here tonight. But, the show goes on. And Cheney and I will be able to talk later in August. We were scheduled, so I'm very excited about that too. But boy, I was very happy that Ben was able to come on and hang out with me and us because that was really great information. And I brought some of the mead that I've made. Now, this mead I made last October, and you can see that it's got a nice color. It's pretty clear. So this one is going to be ready in October, but I figured I would pour some out in honor of talking with Ben, and it tastes pretty damn good. And I took a swig earlier of the other one that I had made. You can kind of see the end of it there. It's lighter in color. Now this one's 2 years old, and this is the one that I had added honey to on the second ferment, and it's very lightly carbonated. This one, I did not do that. And this one, I was able to actually use more blackberries than the first year because I harvested more blackberries. So I'm very curious to see how this one comes out. And I racked this one a third time. But now that I have all that knowledge under my belt that Ben just gave me, I can't wait to make my blackberry mead this year because holy smoke, I'm gonna step that shit up and it's gonna be awesome. Uh, as I said, if you guys didn't take notes, you can re-listen to this episode because there's a lot of great info that Ben shared. So do that for yourselves if you're looking to start making some mead. And as always, I've got some slides for you guys. And let's see if I can pop them up on the screen here. Internet's always slow a little bit. Cheney's doing good. She just had to take a friend to the airport. It was literally that simple. And it was something that like she wouldn't be able to be back in time. And yeah, so that was it. She's all good. Nothing is wrong. So that's good. I wonder why. Yeah, my internet is just super slow. So hold on, guys. Get these slides up for you. It says that they're added already to the screen, but they're not. So I know, Thunder Chicken. I can't believe how fast it's flying too. The summer. See, I can't even get comments up on the screen because it's just I've hit a slow patch or something like that. But yeah, I know. I just did a harvest of cabbage and wax beans and some calendula and spearmint, and I was out in the garden going like, "Holy shit! I can't believe that we're at this point already." It's just I was talking to Ben before we went on, and just talking about how different of a summer we've been having over here, and it's mostly event wise and just like life wise. It's just been a different summer to the point where just time has been occupied in different ways that it hasn't been before. And so and also, Mario and I are both putting out way more content than we were before. So there's the other thing too, so just things change, but in a really, really good freaking way. And so it's been good, but it's just been different, and different's good though, because you need change, and it's all good. And so Ian said, got my first beans today. Super stoked. That's awesome. The wax beans I'm growing for my grandma, and I sent those buggers off to her today. I put them in the mail today, and I hope that they stay fresh for her. But she was saying that she can't find wax beans anywhere. She's always wanted to, she wants to, she said that she can't find them in the stores anywhere, and she's just at the age, she's 88, so she's not really into planting anymore, even though she does flowers and stuff. But I offered to plant some for her when I was back home this summer, and she was like, I'd rather not. I don't want to have to even deal with it. And so I said, you know what, Gran, I'll grow you wax beans. So her first crop went out in the mail today, so that's really cool. And yeah, so Thunder Chicken, I have late crops with my direct seed approach this year. Nothing's coming up yet. Okay, yeah, right on. Well, I think that we're gonna have a long summer. That's my estimation, like temperature wise. That's how I feel, but I could be totally wrong. But we're also in different regions. I totally understand that. Yeah, I know. Got to be a local market near her. There probably is. I don't know. I don't know, but I hope that they made it. And if they didn't make it fresh enough, what I told her I would do is just pickle them for her, or can them, and then I'll send them to her when they're canned. So we'll see. But Gran has wax beans on the way, so that's pretty damn cool. So, all right, patrons, thank you to everybody. You guys, seriously, it means so much. You guys are probably going to help me and Mario get to Flattoberfest. Perhaps all the little things really help. Those are the things that just means so much to us. And so I am currently working on more exclusive content for patrons, because right now, the patrons all get my newsletter early, but I really want to start flowing some more exclusive content. So my first thing is going to be about my ear infection and what I use to help myself get through that. I'm still a little bit on the mend, I would say. Like, my ear is really plugged up still, but the pain has really subsided, and I'm kind of just working on draining it. It's like, I know there's still fluid in there. And I'm just trying to be as attentive to it as possible. So thank you to everybody. So a patron exclusive video will be coming out on that and all the things that I use, because I was kind of blown away at some of the remedies that I was able to use and get some relief with. So Chance, Binaboo, Inland Sea, Liam, Amy, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander, Spoons, Mary, Catherine, Logan, Lilyvine, Debbie, Natasha, Mary Beth, Nikasa, and Stephanie. Thank you so, so, so much. Really appreciate you guys. As I always say, don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's very much appreciated. Patreon.com/thehealinghome if you want to sign up. Next week's show is Emily Rideout of Astro Yoga. Now, I got to meet Emily on she's been on Interverse quite a bit with Chance, but I got to actually spend some time with her on the last Astro Herbs episode, and I really, really enjoy her, and she's very knowledgeable, and I love the fact that she is blending astrology and yoga, because yoga is one of my favorite personal practices. It's been one of my favorite practices for about 7 years now. And it is one of those things that I notice such a big difference when I'm actually consistently doing it. And I notice if I skip a few days or I'm not as good with it, I totally notice a difference in my body and my mood and everything. So we're going to get down and talk about her practice. She just released a book not too long ago, probably about like 3 or 4 months ago, I think, and just talk about how she blends these two practices, these two art forms, these two sciences, if you want to call them that. But I look at it more of like it's like a natural science, astrology and yoga. But anyway, it's going to be fun. So that's August 1st, the same day as the full moon, 4 p.m. here on YouTube. Next full moon offering also comes out on August 1st. So you can be looking for that. You can sign up for my newsletter if you aren't already at michelleshealinghome.com. And I do still have some of my fresh St. John's wort tincture and anointing oil available. That comes as a set. So it's a 1 ounce fresh St. John's wort tincture and a 1/2 ounce fresh St. John's wort anointing oil, which is fabulous. I really like it. And I think that it's wonderful medicine. So up on the screen here is my my offerings that I currently have and the menu along with the prices. So you can see all of that there. St. John's wort set is $44. The CBD cannabis root and white willow bark is $38. And I've also got CBD St. John's wort massage and body oil. The St. John's wort's coming through strong. It's Leo season right now. So that is a very Leo sun based herb. The goldenrod, I have some goldenrod tincture from last year that I made, but the goldenrod is just about popping up with its golden colors. It's really cool. The buds are just forming, and the buds have been forming, but the color of the flowers is just about coming through, and it's always this beautiful golden shade of yellow that you can like faintly see underneath the green. It's super nice. So goldenrod is a great remedy, but I do have tincture of that as well. michelleshealinghome@gmail.com for any orders, inquiries, if you want to schedule a consultation and all of that jazz. We're soon going to have an online store for me, which will be awesome, because then I can have all my products just up on there, and people can still email me to order things, but it'll be cool to have an online store. I haven't had one of those in a long time. So it'll be fun to get that rolling by the end of the summer. That's our goal. michelleshealinghome.com for my blog, for offerings. You can also contact me through the website as well. You can also call and text me. This number here is my Google Voice number. So it's 503-568-1569. That number is hooked up to my email. So sometimes things get a little wonky with it. So just be patient if you do that. But that is a good way to contact me too, because if you feel like doing that, then you can do that. Some people don't like emailing. Last Thursday, every Thursday. Last week, we had a great episode where we talked about the Hells Angels, the Satan slaves. We talked about the straight Satans as well, but just all of these biker gangs and their connections to the 1960s specifically, and some of our theories about why they are so heavily connected. And I got to say, I love mob stuff. I always have since I was a young girl. And one of my favorite movies of all time is Goodfellas. And I know it's a mainstream Hollywood film and everything, but we just watched it the other night as a rewatch. And I just have to say, if you're into that sort of thing, dude, I think that that's Scorsese's like best film. And the shots in the film are brilliant. The scenery, the costumes, the music, the acting, it's world class in my opinion. And if you like mob movies, it's seriously so good. But one of the things that I turned and said to Mario when we were watching it, I was like, dude, this is total Hell's Angel shit, because there's a line in there where Ray Liotta says something to the effect of, we're basically hired protection for people who can't go to the cops. And that's exactly what the Hells Angels are, in my opinion. Not all of them, though, as we talked about in the episode, because, some of the guys that are involved and women who are involved in motorcycle clubs just like to ride motorcycles, which is fucking awesome, too. And I come from a long line of family members who ride motorcycles. None of them were in the Hells Angels or motorcycle clubs, but they're independent riders. And so that's been always something that's been near and dear to me because I grew up around that culture. And so for me, I just always was like, dude, sweet. I've never taken the plunge and gotten my motorcycle license, but I've always been around them and would ride all the time with my family members and my dad on the back or the front sometimes, safety to the side, I guess, when I was a little girl on my dad's, dirt bikes and stuff. But, the culture, it's not, I think it gets a bad rap sometimes. But what we were trying to point out is just the connection that's pretty uncannily there when it comes to them being some sort of means of protection for, as I just said, people who can't go to the police. So that was our take on that. But if you didn't get to see that and you're interested in that sort of thing, highly recommend listening to this episode because it was a really good one. We had a lot of fun. And this coming Thursday, I don't think we're going to have a last Thursday though, because Mario is going to be on Old World, Florida once again. And they're actually going to be talking about the periodic table of elements. Apparently, Dr. Longo posed that to Mario, and Mario said, sure, what the hell, let's do it. So he's been doing a lot of research on the periodic table, and they're going to talk about that this Thursday on Longo's channel. I believe they're going live at 6 p.m. I can't remember, so don't quote me, but you could just check out symbolicstudies.com if you want to do that, or go to Symbolic Studies on YouTube, and you can, he'll be streaming to his channel as well, but you can also go to Dr. Longo's channel and check him out there. Other than that, my people, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. As always, this was a really fun one, and there was so much information to take in. It is really awesome. One of the other books I wanted to say for people, this is called The Art of Mead Tasting and Food Pairing. So if you're more on the foodie side, which I don't consider myself a foodie, but I definitely love food. I love eating food, and I love making good food, and I love pairing things with certain foods. And so this book here was written by the farmer that we get our beef from. So that's out in Yamhill, Oregon. They're called Kukulon Farms, and it's actually their eggs. They do honey. She makes her own mead. They have beef. They also do, wild caught salmon. They are hooked up with so many really great local people in the Oregon area, coastal Oregon area, that I just really love all their work and all of the products, whether it's meat or cheese or jam or honey that we've gotten from them is excellent. And so this is her book, and it's a really great one because she just goes through meads that you can pair certain foods with. She talks about her own mead making where she makes it at the farm where they're at. So that's a good one. Her name is Christy Mannion Zippor. So you can check that one out too. And I'll probably put that in the show notes for people who are interested in that sort of thing, because that's super fun and awesome as well. Until next time, my friends, again, we won't see you this Thursday, but we'll see you the following Thursday. And we'll see you next Tuesday with Emily for Astro Yoga. You guys take care. We'll see you soon.